Welcome to the podcast, where street smart, business smart, all kinds of smart people share their insights into the world of marketing, career journeys, and personal growth. So sit back and prepare to get enlightened with your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Tribe, I am extremely excited about my guest today, someone who I've known for over 20 years. Yeah, it's
Wow.
Life is moving fast, man. And I first met my guest, Joel Lunenfeld, my freshman year of college at University at Buffalo. He was that cool. Yeah, you were cool back then. I think he had long hair, cool older frat dude who played guitar and was really easy to talk to, and it seemed like he knew it all. And over the years, Joel was like a big brother through the fraternity stuff and, more importantly, life. And he was critical in introducing me to my first internship with the Buffalo Sabres, and later in life paving the way for me at VaynerMedia. And I am thankful and always grateful for that, which takes us to the present. Joel has been one of the top influencers in the digital marketing and social media space for the last 20 years. Yes, he's an OG there. And has recently shifted his focus to the cannabis industry. And he joined NorCal Cannabis in 2019 as the CMO to lead communication, strategy, development, and really getting this brand off the ground. It's amazing. We're going to dig into that. And before NorCal, Joel spent 6 years at a little company called Twitter as a VP of global brand strategy, responsible for business and consumer marketing all around the globe. And before Twitter, he was one of the first employees and actually eventually the CEO of Moxie Interactive, a leading digital agency with all the Fortune 50, 100 companies out there, just crushing it. He's an award-winning marketer, entrepreneur, free thinker who understands cultural trends, emerging technology, and the customer journey. And in 2015, inducted into the Advertising Hall of Fame. Do they have your plaque, like a gold face on the wall?
Yeah, it's etched in cement.
Is there a real Hall of Fame? Like a side profile kind of thing? Like the base, is there a hall? Is there an actual hall?
Not a hall, but there's a website that acts as a hall.
So it's a virtual Hall of Fame. So let's get to it. We're going to talk about cannabis. We're going to talk about branding. We're going to talk about life. Joel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Good stuff. So I think I did a really good job of kind of giving the bio and everything. And I love your story. And I said it again, and firsthand really inspired me throughout my career to watch you, someone a few years older than me, really crushing it and navigating New York City, you were in Atlanta, you were like all over the place. And you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, and I call it seasons and you call it chapters of your life and your career. Let's start with chapter one. Let's talk about when you came out of school. Let's fill everyone in with kind of where your mind was at back then. What was it, 1999?
99, yeah.
Yeah, what was happening in the world in 99?
Yeah, so let's see. My last couple of years in college, I was interning at the Sabres and just learning marketing for the first time. I was an anthropology major. So, study of people, study of culture, study of trends. Looking back now, it makes perfect sense. Looking, from 1999 graduating, I was worried I was going to be like dusting bones in the museum. But, fortunately, through the Sabres and through our fraternity and through Josh Arkin, who my big brother, actually got an internship at a company called Exceed in New York. So Exceed was a digital marketing company. They were a few other companies coming together, like Fifth Floor Interactive and Blue Sky, and it was 99. It was the beginning
1.0.
of the internet. It was wild. It was before Google. It was literally before Facebook, before Twitter, before anything. So back then, my first chapter was an intern, and that was a tough decision because here I am graduating college. I think it's a little bit more accepted now to graduate and get an internship, but I graduated college. I was living at home in Brooklyn, waking up every day, navigating my mom in the front door, asking me if I wanted to cook fish for dinner. I'm like, I got to get the fuck out of here. I got to do something. An internship, will that do it for me? So I decided to take it because it was a whole new career. It was something that we didn't know what to call it. It was digital marketing, but didn't really even have a name then.
Yeah, what was it? It's computer stuff.
My first title when I got hired as an intern there was strategic. What was it? A manager of strategic alliances, which sounded very like military to me. But really, what that was was the early days of the internet where we didn't know what things cost. We didn't really have a value exchange. There were no such thing as paid clicks and search yet. And we were literally trading value. So we would have a client, J. Jill, a catalog client, for example, and we would trade space in Yahoo Shopping, which was this new thing, for a flyer in J. Jill, go to Yahoo Shopping. Or, you know, we called it ninja marketing. Ninja marketing was like literally going into chat rooms and, giving, I guess you would call it like, almost like sponsored posts now, where we're trying to get people in regular conversations.
So it's the early stages of influencer marketing, guerrilla online influencer
marketing, search marketing, and we were doing small buys. And I had a great mentor at the time, this guy Ramsey, who unfortunately, he's passed. He actually worked for me when I was at Moxie, and he passed away a few years after that. But he taught me by negotiating. I would be negotiating with a print publication, and he would say, "Okay, here's what you say, then go back." And then I would do that, and he'd say, "Well, here's what they said. What did you say?" So it was really kind of on the ground training, the beginning of the internet, and that led me to move to Atlanta, where they were opening up an office for Exceed. I also had a music career that I had a kind of a handshake promise of development. I'm a singer-songwriter. I remember I used to play at Molly's Pub in Buffalo.
Do you know the entire Dave Matthews catalog?
I know a lot of songs. Yeah, I sing with my girls now.
Joel, that's
to be able to go from New York and move to Atlanta for the promise of a music career and the promise of be the first person starting a media department at this company. It was I was 21, and it was chapter 1.
So just pause there for a second, going back. And I mean, I preach the value of internships, and I think for me, the most important thing about internships, where I preach them, it's more important to learn what you don't like than what you do like. That way, when it comes time to interview, when it comes time for, your first job, you're like, I remember that internship. I really didn't like the Excel and the pivot tables and all that kind of shit, but I really like the strategy, yada, yada. And that's kind of what I think. Do you remember like a key takeaway? Let's talk about the Sabres. We both had the same internship.
Yeah.
Awesome. There for the Stanley Cup and all that kind of cool shit there. But do you remember like going back, like a key takeaway from your internship days?
Yeah. I'll give you a key takeaway from Sabres and then from Exceed. From the Sabres, the things I absolutely did not like was sitting there and photocopying hundreds of pages at a time in like a really bad suit that they made me wear. That was awful. Maybe they relaxed it when you came in there. What I loved was coming up with promotions inside the stadium, like the fish face for one of the Vanderkamp fish sticks fish face. The camera would pan, it would land on you, and you'd have to do a fish face, and you would win. And we had sweepstakes, and I was like picking the winners and calling them. So it was the beginning of like the first thread of like, oh, there's a creative world out there, marketing. Fast forward to my internship at Exceed, and it was the first day that I knew that I had a career. We had a client, I believe it was Exxon. It was Firestone Tires. And we got in a room and came up with this whole idea for this virtual stadium website, and how you could tie in things like pizza delivery, or you could tie in things like, video. And this was like before streaming video, before anything.
The kernel.
What it was a session where 4 of us sat in a room, drew out ideas, and then the next day we were presenting them to the client, and they liked them. And for me, that was the biggest light bulb I ever had in my career. It was, you can create things and then make them, and people will like them. Like it was mind blowing that you can think of things and they could come to life.
And you felt it, like you felt it inside you, like, I love what I'm doing here, and this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it that first moment. I was like, holy shit, this is
people are gonna listen to me.
In college, I remember sitting around with a lot of people worried about my career, saying like, you have an anthropology major, what are you gonna do? And I remember saying, I want a career where I get paid to be a professional version of myself. Just ideas, communication, and that's been my career goal always.
And you manifested that, and that's what happened.
A professional version of yourself.
It's crazy to look back and say, wow, like I thought about it back then 20 plus years ago, and here I am today. So let's get into the Moxie years. I mean, you accelerated really quick in that organization. I think you were the youngest CEO there. Tell us a little bit about that chapter.
Yeah, so that was amazing. So I was working at Exceed, and there was a woman named Chris Pinto who came in to talk to us. Can you hear me? Yeah. A woman named Chris Pinto who came in to talk to us about a project that they needed media for. It was for Verizon. It was when Verizon Wireless was coming together, GTE Wireless, all these companies coming together as one. And she wanted help pitching the media because they didn't have media capabilities. So at the time, I was actually at 360i. I had moved from Exceed, went to Atlanta, and very quickly, not only did my music career not work out, but I got laid off. So it was my first like, wow, okay, this is what life is.
This is real.
Unfortunately, it was a time when a lot of companies were really, hitting it in the internet world. So I had some options, and I went to 360i. 360i was great experience. It was, learned a ton there as well. But ultimately, it led me to pitching this business, which led me to being hired at Moxie as their first ever media director. That was a small crew, me, Chris, Shelly, Bob, Alan. Like that was the team. It was just creative, technology, account management, CEO, media.
This is the tight squad there.
I'd never managed a person in my life, never been a director in my life. That was my career goal at the time, to be a media director. And that was what I was hired for. So it was fascinating. And that was the most incredible experience, because it was a time when we were competing with the biggest agencies like Bozell and Lowe, and we were trying to compete to win the Verizon business constantly. And we were just scrappier. We out innovated everybody. We made up ideas and we made them happen. We used to call it kind of chinning up. Like, if you had an idea, and you pitch it and they take it, chin up, let's get it done.
I like it.
And, it was the beginning of us all sitting around the room and starting to ask the question, why not us? And that's a really important question.
Yeah, why not? Why, what just because we're smaller than them, we're just as smart, or smarter, our ideas are just as good, we could execute just as well as them. That mindset is critical.
Yeah, somebody's got to win this business. Like, we won Coca-Cola, we won UPS, we won, all these Fortune 100 companies in Atlanta. And every time we'd pitch, we'd sit around the room and we'd say, well, somebody's going to win, why not us? And then, when we got to the bigger building, well, someone's got to, be the biggest agency in Atlanta, why not us? Which we did. We became the biggest agency in the Southeast. And we really led the way for digital marketing in Atlanta. After us, 360i came in there, or 360i started exploding. A ton of other companies, Digitas started moving in, and it just became a digital hub. And that's what we were most proud of in Moxie, was not just the work, but it was like the industry that we were helping.
You were the pioneers in the Southeast.
Yeah,
you laid the groundwork. So how did when you got that, when they gave you the signal and they called you up to the CEO spot, how did that come to fruition?
Yeah, it was interesting. So, again, we just like such an awesome, beautiful team. I can't say more incredible things about Chris. She was the first person in my career to see more in me than I saw in myself. And I think that's important. We all need those people. And she was the first one. When I was inducted into the Advertising Hall of Achievement, she went up and gave the speech to introduce me, and it meant the world to me.
Wow.
But we had a lot of, it was tough. It was a tough integration, great company, Zenith, Publicis, just small scrappy agency into a bigger company. Just, it's not for everybody. And after many years of Chris, working so hard and giving everything up for it, the time came for, her to step down, and they asked me to step up. And I was 29.
That's
never managed before. I had managed these teams now. I was winning a lot of business. I was a really well-known person within the agency and our clients, and, I had leadership skills. So I took on the challenge. And it's another one of those things where you think, if you ever really knew how hard it would be, maybe you wouldn't do it. And I keep on thinking that everything I've ever done in my life,
That's
I'm
awesome.
like, thank God I'm naive as hell, because naivety is so important.
You're right. It opens up. What was your first big, real fuck up mistake? And you're like, shit, there's no one above me. The buck stops with me. I got to figure this shit out as CEO.
That's a great story. And it's a great lesson. So, when I came in, I had ideas. When I became CEO, I had ideas that, the world was moving quickly, and all the big agencies were trying to get into digital, and all the digital agencies, were trying to kind of win their place in the world. And what I wanted to do was move from being a digital agency to being, brilliant marketers that are digitally enhanced. And we wanted to bring in, we brought in, heavy hitter creative directors that had TV experience. And, my whole point was I wanted to lead us into a future that people could follow. So I did this presentation that I absolutely love inside a movie theater for the company. We rented out a movie theater, had, the several hundred people, I think it was maybe 300 people at the time, come in, and I did this entire presentation. I built it digitally with some help from my creative team, and it was just the story of innovation and where we were going. It was super inspiring, and everybody was ready to be shot for a cannon. And then it came down to, well, how do we change the actual departments and the way we move to shape to this future? And that's where I made probably the biggest mistake I ever made as CEO there, which was laid out the vision. I brought a pretty large group of people, maybe 20 people across the organization that were leaders together to really figure this out and roll it out. And what I didn't know as a leader at the time was that sounds really good in theory, but whenever you're talking change, whenever you're talking departmental change, role change, how one role may be minimized in the future or one role may go away. Everybody always asks, what about me? It's not about ego. It's not, I'm not saying people are not, it's just, how does this affect me?
Right.
So
protection.
Yeah. So, I rolled out the world's worst org change by having a ton of people as decision makers that were the people that were affected, and changed department names and did all these things at once and kind of rolled it all out and presented it. And it was a fucking mess. Led to attrition, led to a lot of issues. We recovered from it, but
shocked the culture.
Big lesson, which is there's a difference between inclusion and leadership. And there is a line where people really want to be led, and you want to give inputs and you want to get everyone's inputs, but you shouldn't have to have them be the jury and executioner on their own decisions.
That's a critical point. I'm going to jump ahead for a minute. That a point that you wanted to hit on is really talking about leadership from the heart, right? And what does that really mean? And were those early lessons really the foundation to your leadership mindset right now?
Yeah, they definitely were. Just like a baby in the world that like burns their hand one place or falls when they walk this way, like you feel your way around things, right? And we're always learning like that. And what I realized was like I had a superpower. I think everyone needs to know the superpower. And my superpower is I can speak to groups of people and give a vision that people want to follow. That's like straight up, whether it's pitching business or leadership, or that's it, right? So that's a really important skill, but that skill needs a lot of other things underneath it. It needs true authenticity. And so I've always been very proud of the fact that if you meet me at work, if you meet me at a conference, or if you meet me on the street, or you meet me with my friends, I'm the same person. And I think that's critical. And at the time, it wasn't very popular. This was, 2003.
Yeah, but not where we are today with authenticity and vulnerability and transparency.
Yeah, vulnerability, all that. Like that was my aha moment. Like you just, I think now people are a lot more who they are at work. I think like the layers, social media, all that stuff has really made the layers kind of disappear. But that was my big lesson was really got to be authentic. You got to be vulnerable. You got to admit mistakes. And I'm very quick to do that. And you got to also make sure that, when you're bringing people along for a ride, they know their seat.
Right. So let's talk about that transition from Moxie over to Twitter.
Yeah, that was wild. So,
and what's Jack like? Is he what everyone thinks? Yeah.
I tell you, Jack is quick to smile, quick to laugh. He's very, very funny, actually. And he's a very reserved person. But what's some of my greatest memories of Twitter were, in a room with him presenting the new Twitter brand. Like we did a complete rebrand.
It's huge.
And presenting our first TV spots and outdoor campaigns, and just seeing his excitement and his love for advertising was really amazing. He's a big student of advertising. He's also quite the visionary too. Yeah. So let's rewind. It's 2011. I'm living in Atlanta. I'm CEO of Moxie now for a few years. Really good life there. Great wife, Hetty, who I met in Atlanta, actually working at an advertising agency next to each other when I first moved there. And 6 months pregnant or something like that, with our first daughter. And I was feeling the end of my chapter. And it was a combination of things. It was, I think, this is true with Moxie, with Exceed, with Twitter, and, will be true in any career I'm in, which is the minute your journey starts feeling less like a hike and more like a merry-go-round, that's when it's time to leave. And, that to me was happening. It was win another client, expand the business, lose a client, shrink the business, win another client, expand the business. And I just started thinking, well, in the services world of agencies, like, where can I go? And at most, it's just a lot more complex and a lot more clients. And that just wasn't exciting.
Just another agency. Mm-hmm.
It was building, but it wasn't permanent building. It wasn't building a product. It wasn't building. That was my yearning to really do something that's a product that people love. So we were doing a lot of pitching that was Twitter based at the time. And Adam Bain, who was my boss at Twitter, we were working together on the L'Oreal business on the pitch. And we had this awesome custom pitch that I worked on directly with Adam. I got Dick Costolo, the CEO of Twitter at the time, to record a video for us for the pitch. We won it. It was incredible. We won some other business together, and they noticed how I understood the platform. And at the time, we were the biggest advertiser too with Verizon on the platform. And they only had one product there. It was one sponsored search listing.
Right.
So that's when they approached me. Could you come on board to help us figure out this advertising business? It was a very small team at the time, a few hundred people at the company. Adam Bain was building a sales team, and it was, maybe 10 or so sales folks across the country. And what we realized was people didn't really have to understand just why Twitter, but how Twitter. And that was the vision. Almost build an internal agency inside Twitter.
Interesting.
Build an internal agency that can help educate other agencies and brands on how to use the platform. But back to kind of the transition, the job offer came my way, and it just made all the sense in the world. I remember after my first conversation with Adam, we had a drink in Atlanta after we had a meeting, and I called my brother up and I said, I'm going to work at Twitter. I didn't know that like 6 months later I'd have to interview, meet the board, negotiate a package, all of those things. But it was like a movie. I actually got my offer at Cannes on the beach, sitting with Adam, with the Twitter crew, having a drink, and
that's so awesome.
It was great. That was 2011.
I love it.
I started in 2011, and that was a wild time.
I love it. It's funny you mentioned that too. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. I remember almost all the jobs that I've had when I actually got the offer, where I was. I remember the Vayner one too. We started construction on my house. The day we started construction, and I was sitting on my front steps of my house that we just bought when I got the offer letter from Vayner. So it's always interesting to remember those points. So the Twitter journey, I mean, you were there for, a pretty exceptional growth period in the company. I mean, you saw it go from, I don't know what the numbers are, from X amount of followers to the next, but what was the big innovation that you helped shepherd into Twitter?
Yeah. Well, first, I give my big lesson when I first joined there, and that led to an innovation. I think everyone's familiar with imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I think healthy people have that. Don't believe your own bullshit. No one is as good as they think they are ever. And that's important. I've spoken to some of the most brilliant people in the world, and I've asked them that question always. And it's amazing how almost everyone I've ever spoken to admits to it. But anyway, I had a big case of that coming in. I was like, I am the first people that they gave me on my team were Harvard MBA, summa cum laude, Stanford graduates,
thoroughbreds.
Yeah, it was my first experience with this is what it's like when everyone around you is fucking brilliant, and they all attack problems from different angles. And this one's an aerospace engineer, and this one is a master brand marketer. So I had a lot of intimidation when I first got in there. And what I realized after a little while being there were kind of two lessons. One, people really wanted to listen to me. They wanted to be led. There were a lot of people that really wanted direction, and to give it confidently and to give it with inspiration was something that they really, really wanted. The other was I realized that my second superpower that I didn't really quite know was the ability to take really complex things and turn them into very simple stories and take,
That's
you know,
a
really,
huge skill. That's a huge superpower.
yeah. And it was something that really worked well at Twitter because it was a complex business and a lot of moving parts. And it was my first time really understanding like the workings and the politics of a giant tech organization. You know, that's 50% engineers, and you're talking to product people that are brilliant, that have invented the product, and you're trying to convince them to do a thing, right? So like, what does that look like? So the thing at Twitter that I'm most proud of was actually, you know, in the first few months there, which was I met a relationship. I was at an event and I met this woman, Leslie Berland, who's fast forward today, she's the CMO of so we met at a party, Amex party where she worked, and you know, we were like, hey, you need to meet each other because she's interested in commerce on Twitter, and you know, I'm there a few months in the role now, maybe 2 months in the role, and I'm still commuting back and forth because Hetty's pregnant, and I'm in Atlanta, you know, 3 days a week, and you know, San Francisco 4 days a week, and doing all this. So I meet Leslie and we start talking about this idea of, you know, pay with a tweet or the ability to do savings through tweets. And we were also launching our small business self-serve platform, and Amex has an amazing small business platform.
They're known for the small business. Mm-hmm.
So it was Leslie and I were just talking about it for a while, and then we went right into the plan of attack. How do we get this program off the ground? Digitas, which is an agency that's representing the media buying, I was close with them. They were one player. We had Dick, who is the CEO of Twitter, somebody to really get on board, who's another player. We had Jack, who was actually working on the product team, kind of as a product advisor at the time, who was another person you had to get on board. Then you had, on the Amex side, you had, you know, CEO of Amex and president. So we had all of these players, and it was like going back into the agency world. And Leslie and I literally plotted out all the things we needed to get it done. Long story short, we launched at South by Southwest, Pay with a Tweet, where we had Jay-Z perform, coming out of after his first baby, like his paternity leave, flew into South by Southwest. And I got to stand up in front of the whole company at Twitter and tell them about this and hype them up and use Jay-Z music. And that was like my first intro to the whole company at once. And it was very strategic, and it was my second lesson in when you get into a new place, what to do. And that is prove yourself first and then introduce yourself.
I love it. Prove yourself first. Don't just come in there and, you know, guns blazing. No one likes that.
Don't come in and introduce who you are and what you're going to do. Go in there, do something, and then tell everybody what you're doing and why that matters and what that means for the future of the company.
So fast forward, I mean, you spent a couple of really good years, a couple longer than that at Twitter. What was that impetus? You know, did you get that feeling again that you were on that merry-go-round and it was time to look on to greener pastures?
Yeah, so it was interesting. You know, Twitter had chapters in and of itself. When I first got there, it was building the advertising business. We went from a couple $100,000 in revenue to 2.4 billion in 5 years. You know, had an office
accelerated growth
around 22 countries where we're managing, you know, all of these teams around the world and traveling around the world and learning about tax structure and opening up offices and just meeting amazing leaders from around the world. Because we would hire like Bruce Daisley. He was the head of YouTube in Europe, and now he's leading Twitter. And like just meeting all these folks, you know, from Japan to Turkey to Spain, you know, everywhere in between. That was amazing. When Adam Bain actually left Twitter, I was also feeling like the winds of change coming, and I was really interested in the consumer side of things. And I had the chance to come over to lead the consumer marketing, the brand strategy for consumer marketing at Twitter. And at the time, we were recruiting a CMO, and lo and behold, you know, we recruited Leslie, and it was like the best full circle relationship ever. I love her to death. Like, yeah, I can't say enough amazing things about her as well. You know, which is interesting. Looking back in my career, some of my biggest mentors and people I work with most were women. And you know, I love that about Moxie early days, and it's something that's always kind of been part of my upbringing with my sister. And now I have 2 daughters and a wife and a female cat and a female dog, and all women all the time in my life.
It's not a bad thing, man. It's a great thing.
You know, I feel like it's helped me to become a more empathetic leader and, you know, be a little bit more in touch with just, the organizational feelings. And I digress. So Twitter, after 4 years of really killing it in the world of advertising and doing our first upfronts and doing our first, Nielsen Twitter TV deals, and I shot a documentary at Cannes that I was able to present on stage with Sir Patrick Stewart and Leslie Berland.
I remember that.
Like,
I was like, is that you with that guy? Yeah. I was like, oh shit, look what Joel's with.
We did I did every possible thing I could have imagined ever at that company. And then on the advertising side, launched their first ever campaigns and won every single advertising award, literally won Clio's, won Grand Prix Lions.
Pencils, Lions, Gold, Tigers, and Bears.
Like everything. And it's funny because I've never studied advertising. And my wife, who teaches advertising, like, you're fucking Forrest Gumping your way through this advertising
You're
world.
Forrest Gumping your way through.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. In a lot of, with a lot of love behind that statement.
Of course.
But, and that was it. That was 6 years. But there was a moment, I definitely remember the moment, which was I woke up when I was 40, on March 18th. I woke up, and this was 2017, turned 40. And I had set a goal at 22 when we first started Moxie. We had this great coach, and she was amazing, Sheila, who really got us to talk about what we want from our careers. And one of the things I took away was I want to retire at 40. And I worked towards that. I invested in real estate. I took any money I ever made and really tried to set myself up financially. And then, of course, with selling the agency, and then I was really fortunate with Twitter being pre-IPO to IPO, definitely did well. I was in a situation where if I wanted to, I could, which was just amazing, like another amazing manifested goal.
That's crazy.
But my thoughts started shifting to what retirement means. And I look at it more as diversification of my time. I had started a nonprofit at the time.
The gym, the boxing gym?
Guardian, yeah. Guardian is a nonprofit community center for kids, boxing, jiu-jitsu, 250 kids that we serve, and we're about to move into a much bigger space that can serve, 5 times that amount. And that was when things were a little bit rough at Twitter, when there was a lot of politics, when people were changing hands and Dick was leaving and Jack was coming in, and Game of Thrones style, all the press was reporting on it. I really needed a pure outlet, both a creative outlet and something to kind of give. I felt like I've been taking a lot in life. And with my daughter being born, my first daughter, and then my second daughter on the way, I thought I need to start giving more. I used to teach camp. I was with kids all the time, and it reminded me. My dad was a teacher. He taught kids. I digress, but it started Guardian, and it was a great creative project, which is another lesson, which is sometimes when work isn't fulfilling at the moment, because maybe it's more, bureaucracy and, tough conversations than fun. Start a creative outlet, start something different, whether it's music or a nonprofit.
Just find something that makes you happy.
Stuff going. I love just building. I love creating, and that helped. So, I woke up 40 years old thinking that was 40 years. My dad died, unfortunately, at 62, pretty young. So, I think anyone who's had a parent that's died young benchmarks themselves against their lives. And I just thought, that was 40 years. What's the next 40? And it's not going to be what the last 40 were. So I decided then that I was gonna quit. And I knew when. I was going to do it after Cannes, after we launched our campaigns, after everything was taken care of and I transitioned stuff. And it's a tough conversation, and I left. But I left to go work on Guardian, and I left to start consulting and working with other startups and diversifying my time and becoming a free agent. And I did that for a year and a half, and it was great. But then I felt a calling again.
And what was that calling? What was coming your way?
It was weed.
Weed.
Weed. No, it was
man, I can't believe we can't get away from this stuff. No, we love it. So before we talk about NorCal, cannabis is interesting, man. I mean, different reasons, different folks for different strokes. And it's just insane to watch the evolution in this country. So how did that relationship start with NorCal? How did that come about?
Yeah. So, let's put ourselves back about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Back in the rewind machine.
Almost every conversation I had with anyone involved some sort of cannabis, grow or startup or technology company like Ease. And, I started investing. I invested in Ease. And I invested in NorCal through a good friend, Ben Kovacs, who's actually our head of sales here. who is my co-founder at Guardian and worked with me at Twitter, and we're great friends and have been on lots of journeys together now. And he put together an SPV. We all invested in this company, and then I met the company, and I knew that it was another instant. Oh, I see. This is my next career.
You felt it.
And the pattern recognition that I had was every other part of my chapters of my career had been at the beginning of something. So the beginning of digital, like before we knew what it was called, the beginning of social media with Twitter. Like, Twitter, people don't remember that Twitter invented in-feed advertising. Like, we invented native advertising in-feed that now Facebook does, and Instagram and Snapchat, everyone. We invented it. So it was the beginning. It was the beginning of social media really impacting culture. And to me, this is now the beginning. Now, I say the beginning, we stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on the shoulders of activists, and many people have gotten the California cannabis world to where it is today, and we respect that. That's part of why I love our company.
The OGs.
But this is the beginning. So that's what I realized. I love the beginning of industries.
So in such a saturated market, I mean, I maybe not say that. I mean, it's definitely the Wild West right now, and it's a big land grab. I mean, what makes NorCal different than all your competitors? What makes you stand out? What was it about this company that you said, not only am I going to invest my money into this, but I'm going to commit my time in a full-time role?
Yeah. So, I think it all starts with like the heart of the company and what we stand for. And my first assignment was come in and help figure out NorCal's brand, and it was standing right in front of me. Everyone I talked to said, hey, I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've been in black market and mixed market, gray market, medical. People that have dedicated their lives, dedicated time in jail, dedicated a lot of loss, dedicated a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hustle, and a lot of entrepreneurship. And that's, kind of what, like, the strong roots of the company, the strong roots of the industry. And myself coming in here and several other folks that we brought, like, we really believe that, we can take those strong roots, but lead it into the bright future of the industry. So strong roots, bright future kind of sums up our value proposition. But what that really means is we want to be the people that usher cannabis from where it was to where it's going. And that is something that's very difficult. And when I looked around at NorCal, I realized we have done the really difficult things really well. We have 130,000 square foot indoor facilities where we grow premium flower, and incredible manufacturing and packaging, but we just didn't really have a handle on brands and how to bring brands to market. And that was an opportunity for me. So I looked at this as a creative playground of multiple brands, house of brands, retail, new industry. And I'm convinced that what we do in the next 5 years to talk about cannabis will impact the next 100 for how we talk about it. And that to me is like, there's no better value proposition to a new job or career than that.
That's incredible. I mean, you have that fire back.
Yeah, exactly. And that was it. The fire, literally eye of the tiger. I was thinking about that. I was like, I'm in it now. I'm just like, yeah, that's it. You need that. Like, retirement sounds nice. And I love my family. I love lots of things. I record music still. I'm an artist. Like, I love a lot of things in life, but that drive that you get from achieving and building and growing something, especially with a group of people, getting back to operating, that to me is everything.
That's incredible. So let's shift that a little bit. Let's talk about, how you balance it, right? Like, how do you balance work, family, fitness, music, mindfulness? I mean, you and I were talking about this, your shift in your diet too. Like, how do you keep it all together?
Yeah, good question. Keeping it together is my medicine, I've realized. I have a great person who talked to me about this, which is I can't choose to just let something be lopsided. I can't, because, I've got a family I really love, friends I really love, a career I really love, a nonprofit I really love, like music I really love, lots of things, right? So integration has always been the most important goal for me, just how to integrate it. And I used to believe that the cycle of your career and life were something that, you could have 2 or 3 months that were incredibly crazy, and then you have to have like a month or so that is not. And that worked for a while until I realized, like, especially in an industry like cannabis, where it's every industry coming together, It's, you know, it's
All the
the
pieces.
seasonality of retail, the seasonality of agriculture, the, you know, just such demands. What I realize is it's about daily integration. And, you know, for me, and this has been a long journey, like you knew me in college, I've always been like heavier. I've always been like somebody that, you know, I've had really bad knees. I've had major knee surgeries. Like I've lived with, you know, pain, and I've lived with a lot of weight in my life. And what I realized is it's all about mental health and clarity. So, you know, as everyone will tell you today, like learning how to meditate, you know, doing Kundalini yoga that really teaches me how to kind of not just meditate, but breathe actively. And
Breathing
it's
is
physical.
critical.
And I need to do some form of exercise in the morning, Peloton or lift weights. Have to do it. It gets my head straight. It's my
Gets the
medicine.
blood flowing.
Yeah. And then I need to, you know, the other thing that came to me is as I've gotten older is I just need to eat more plants. Like, you know, I'm not a vegan, but I'm close. Like I'll eat meat once a week or so, and that's a shift that I'd never believed I could ever make. And what I realized is a combination of exercise, mindfulness, and eating right. If I do that, I can do anything. It really makes everything much better. And you talked about Gary Vee before. Like I loved watching, you know, I knew Gary when I first got to Twitter. We did a bunch of stuff together and it was great. And he like transformed his body and transformed his exercise regime. And no coincidence, I think, that as that was happening, his profile, his hustle, his career was just going like this. And
he doesn't talk too much. He doesn't talk enough about that.
Yeah.
I mean, he
had
showcases
it's amazing. But I watched it happen. And I watched him get increasingly productive. And, you know, I would just say that it's something that it's so obvious, but maybe it takes being 42 or older to understand, which is it's all connected. Your mind, your body, your spirit, your gratitude, like it's all connected. You can't you know, we've convinced ourselves that like you can separate and compartmentalize things, but you can't.
What would 42-year-old Joel say to 22-year-old Joel right now?
It's a good question. It would say, come back from Vegas. Stop now. He would say that. I actually wouldn't say anything to myself. I wouldn't want to fuck it up because I wouldn't believe it, and I wasn't ready to learn it. And I would probably just like watch. You know, I'd be one of those ghosts in the movies that just kind of peeks around but doesn't want to change the future.
I love it. That's fucking awesome.
But I would say, 16-year-old Joel or 12-year-old Joel is like, you won't always be in poverty. You won't, you know, you dream bigger than you think you can dream, because at the time, you know, I didn't even know how to make a goal. So that's what I would say to a much younger me, is just like, believe that you could actually dream bigger, and there's more out there than you know.
I love it, man. Joel, what do you envision as your legacy that you want to leave behind? How do you, when your time comes on this earth, how do you want people to remember you?
Yeah, you know, so it's interesting. And like our conversation the other day got me thinking about this too. You know, when I left Twitter, when I left Moxie, I describe it as like what the Romans say is like a hero's death. You know, like I was like, the amount of love pouring out, the amount of people that sent me emails that I sent them and said, this email made me think about, you know, how I manage people differently, or that time you gave me that advice that did this thing, or I can't believe you helped me out and got me to this thing that changed my career. And I don't think about those things in the moment. I just like, I really want to I really believe it's my duty to give, to serve. Like maybe it's the Jew in me. It's like, you have to serve. That's what you're supposed to do, you know? But I don't think it's a legacy. It's, you know, living on in the lives of other people that can remember that time that person was kind, or put them in the right direction, or said that thing that made a difference. And, you know, now with kids, it's a whole other story, because like, that's my everyday project. But
every day,
that's a legacy I want to leave. Just like, you know, somebody that humbly gave people direction that could hopefully put them in without wanting something back.
That's fantastic. And the question that I ask every guest, what is the greatest piece of advice that you've ever received that you take action on daily?
It's a good question. So I received this advice years ago, but I haven't really started taking action on it daily until maybe a couple years ago, which is that you have to practice gratitude, and you have to turn your you have to turn your expectations into gratitude. So you can't just expect that everything happens. You can't take for granted that, I can't take for granted that, somebody did a great job just because they're being paid for it. You can't take for granted that, even though maybe the day was crazy, I get to come home and have a beautiful life. Like, you have to practice gratitude, just like you have to work out, just like you have to practice anything else to get good at. And when you're feeling gratitude, you can't feel other feelings. It's like just literally the solve for everything. So I've been told about that a long time. This guy, John Hall, who was actually one of my first bosses at Exceed. But I didn't understand it until 20 something years later. That's
incredible. And Joel, last but not least,
expectations into appreciation. That was it.
Awesome. And it's great. And last but not least, like, not every day is going to be sunshine and rainbows. Not every day is going to be fucking incredible. And there's days weeks, months that like suck, and you got to dig down deep, and you got to look inside, and you got to look up. And then on the flip side of that, when you wanted to show gratitude, what pulls you up, Joel? Joel, what is your North Star?
Yeah, it's my family. It's my kids, my girls. It's that. It's family.
Family first. I love it. Joel, thank you.
Every sense of the word family, right? Like you. So
it's awesome, man. And we got to get the girls together soon. We're gonna get out there. We're gonna do more. 2000 and 2021, we're gonna start taking these road trips. We're gonna come out west. I feel like the girls are just gonna get into some crazy shit, man. Joel, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Good to see you, Adam. Take care.
And closing thoughts. Mentors manifest in so many ways. They could be super close and hands-on, or mentor from afar and lead by example. And from day one, when I met Joel, assuming it was in a smoky basement at a party somewhere in Buffalo, some place that should be condemned, the fire marshal should just shut it down, he was someone that I looked up to. And he led by example then, and as he does now. And he set a professional standard for success and integrity that I strive towards, and I thank him for that. And Joel truly understands today's modern marketing and social media, how to communicate and earn attention. And I applaud him for his own self-awareness professionally as he turns the pages in each chapter in his career and personally, building the life and family that he's always dreamed about. Joel, thank you for always being there for me, and thank you for being an ear. Thank you for being someone I could reach out to and helping me along my journey. I appreciate it deeply.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Joel, where could folks find you? Where could they connect with you?
Yeah, JOELL on Twitter. Keep up.
Awesome. Good stuff. This is definitely one of my favorite interviews. I love it. I can't wait to get it out there. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on the podcast. Remember to click, link, subscribe, comment, share it. This one's awesome. Remember, take your online offline. Thank you for joining us, and catch us next week on another great episode of the podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode jam-packed with more incredible humans. For more info, please visit www.nhptalentgroup.com.